Good afternoon, guys, and girls too. It's hard to imagine, but you know, in about a month, I'm going to be in the woods setting up deer camp, getting ready for our next hunting season. Time's flying. Lots to learn, lots to teach too. Like today, my subject is the war that's going on between us every year, between our noses and the noses of whitetails, which we don't win very often because whitetail noses are about 10,000 times more sensitive to human noses. Everything in the woods they can identify by scents alone, from dirt to rotten leaves and humans and wolves and birds of all kinds. Their noses tell them what those things are, at least for older whitetails. Young whitetails like fawns and yearlings are still under the direction of their mothers, still learning from their mothers how to deal with danger and how to identify danger. They still make mistakes. Yearlings make a lot of mistakes when it comes to scents, the airborne scents, trail scents. So they're not as good at this, but once a whitetail is a 3.5-year-old, they get to be really tough to hunt, primarily because they recognize everything by their smell, and it's a lot tougher for us hunters to avoid them identifying us by smell, and it makes them much more difficult to hunt. Well, at any rate, today I was going to talk to you about using scents, lure scents, to hunt whitetails. There's better ways to use lure scents. I don't know if anybody's using any technique like I'm going to tell you, but before we start on that, we should talk about basics of how scents work when we're hunting whitetails. For example, let's imagine here's a deer trail in the woods here. The hunter walking along that deer trail out there in the woods. And let's say the wind is coming from that direction. And wherever the whitetail or the hunter walks, let's say he's right here now, all of his scents are spreading out through a pie-shaped area downwind, like that. If the wind is real strong, it might be narrower, but if the wind is mild, you know, up to say 10 miles an hour, it gets to be a really wide area. It spreads out, your scents getting mixed all through this area. What a lot of stand hunters don't realize, let's talk about that a little bit too. Let's say here's a stand hunter in a tree up here. And a lot of hunters believe that when you're up in the tree, the whitetails on the ground can't smell you. But that's not true either. All human odors will spread through a widening area that touches the ground, up and down, and that goes downwind as well. To prove it, just think about this for a minute. Let's say your neighbor's got a wood fire in his chimney or in his fireplace like here, and you're downwind and you look over there at this house. Here's a house and the chimney, and the smoke is going up like that. But if you're downwind of it, anywhere downwind of where that smoke is going up into the air, if you're over here, you can smell that smoke, which means there's all kinds of odoriferous molecules of smoke that are falling to the ground, as well as going up in the air, the visible smoke going up into the air. And so when you're up in a tree, your odors are also falling to the ground, and they're going straight out as well. But on a day like today, we got a mild breeze out there today. On a day like today, your scent will be on the ground within 25 to 50 yards downwind. Well, and so they can smell you on the ground, that far away, downwind. Now, a lot of hunters, every hunter I've ever talked to about this says, oh, I've had them walk up behind me several times. Well, let me show you something. Let's imagine, here you are in a tree. Here you are in a tree, and here's a tree trunk, and you're on your little tree stand. And the wind is blowing in that direction, and spreading out downwind like that. Well, if a deer is walking toward you, Well, here, if you're up in the tree, actually the wind will start touching the ground away from the stand. But if a deer walks toward you, say from the side, walks up along this side of that spreading area, it can seem like here comes a deer from downwind. They obviously can't smell you. Well, they can't smell you outside of that pie-shaped area, but they can smell you in it anywhere in there, a large area, which gets wider and wider, out 200 yards. It's almost 200 yards wide. And if that deer is anywhere in that area, he's going to smell you. What if he comes up alongside like this, and then, or even comes along here and then turns toward you in this area where none of your scent has reached the ground yet? You'll see a deer coming from downwind. You'll say, oh boy, tree stands work great because they can't smell you up here. But so it can happen. Every now and then somebody will see a deer that's coming from downwind, simply because it's either inside the area where your scent finally touches the ground, or they're outside of that, coming from a little bit of an angle from this side, and they can't smell you. Well, let's get back to this other part here. Now, here's the hunter on the trail, and he's walking through the woods, and wind's blowing from that direction. And wherever the hunter is going, there's this area blowing downwind. And out here 200 yards and let's say 100 yards. Now the way whitetails react to that airborne scent going downwind, it has a lot to do with how far you away. Now one of the things whitetails can do is figure out how far you're away by the intensity of your scent. Within 100 yards it's intense enough, so whitetails will be really worried about you when they get a whiff of you. Now you might not see this happening. In fact, it can happen 8 times every mile you talk, or even more walk, even more often than you realize. Here's a whitetail standing in heavy cover somewhere with 100 yards, and all of a sudden they get a whiff of you. You're walking along and they get caught in this downwind area. Now, if you're hunting, like sneaking and stopping often, they can tell that. Gee, here's the smell, and it's moving, you know, up here it's moving again, and then all of a sudden you halt. And then the most intense part of the odor in the middle here doesn't move. It's just staying there, maybe for a half minute, probably. Most still hunters don't stop longer than that, and they're looking around to see if there's any deer around, and then start up again, and it goes in that fashion. That whitetail knows you're hunting. This is typical of a wolf or a human or a bear. Walk along and stopping to look around, see if there's a nice little fawn or a yearling they might be able to catch. But at any rate, when a whitetail is within 100 yards, they can become quite alarmed. A big buck, he might just freeze and cover until you're past. And he'll likely do that if you're not stopping often. If you're heading to a stand site, you just keep moving, then it won't seem like you're hunting. You're just interested in getting somewhere out here in the distance somewhere. And deer along the way won't be terribly alarmed by you if you don't stop along the way to get to a stand site. Just go straight there, and they'll stay there. But anyway, this area is the area where they get most excited. Now, if you're sent, they'll get you out here at 100, 200 yards too, and it's been my experience in all these years of doing this kind of research, 55 years of it, that most whitetails aren't particularly alarmed by your airborne odors out at the 200-yard area. When they get out here, they'll ignore you. You get the smell and odor. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're sitting still or moving along or stopping off. As long as you're 200 yards away, they aren't worried about you. They consider that a safe distance. That might not be true out in Nebraska or somewhere where it's wide open, but in wooded areas it's generally true. So actually, you know, a doe a mile away that's in heat can be smelled by a big buck. They can smell that doe in heat pheromone that far away. So I'm sure they can smell you too that far away, but if you're 200 yards or more away, they aren't so worried about you. That's an important thing to know. Like, if you're going to go to a stand site, say on the other side of a clear cut or a feeding area, it'd be a good idea if you got to travel anywhere to get there downwind to be at least 200 yards away of that area where you're planning to sit. Because any deer that are in this area, if you're 200 yards away, won't be alarmed by you. And then come straight from the downwind direction to get to your tree stand. But there's more to this. There's some basic things to know about. For example, the hunter that walks along this trail here is also laying down trail scent. The trail scent is, I don't know, I'm guessing about 6 to 8 feet wide. It's not, the scent isn't just where your feet touch the ground. You know, I recently got an email from a hunter who said, I spray the bottoms of my boots with odor killer, and so they can't smell my tracks. But you know, think about that. But one of the most intense odors us hunters emit constantly in the woods is the odor of rubber. It's so doggone hard to get rid of. Pick up your hunting boot, smell the rubber sole on it, like on packs or most boots nowadays. Smell that rubber. It might be not be actual rubber, it smells like rubber. And it's pretty strong. Your own nose can smell that pretty well. And you might spray something on there, and a lot of these things that are supposed to eliminate human odors, they eliminate them as far as human nose is concerned, but not deer noses. I've mentioned this before, but recent research with canine dogs has proven that no matter what you wear or what you spray on yourself, anything you use to eliminate human odors isn't that effective. It's not 100%. It'll reduce odors all right, but not 100%. Because canine dogs, no matter what you use, or you could use them all, will find you just as quickly as if you weren't using any of those things. So the odors that they use to find you are there. And if a dog can find you because of those kind of odors, so can a deer. So anyway, you got to be thinking about that. Well, you think, all I have to do is approach the plan where I plan to stand hunt from downwind, and I'm okay. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But I was talking about trail scent. From my experience, I think trail scent, you know, all human odors drop to the ground. You know, it's falling to the ground. And some of the most intense of those odors are the smell of rubber from your boots. Each boot print in the ground, on the ground, or in the snow is full of the smell of rubber, a very strong smell. You can spray your soles with something to minimize that odor, but how far are you going to go before that's all wiped away? You know, on the ground or stepping something wet or in the snow. Probably within about 20 steps, there's plenty of rubber odor in your footsteps again. So it's not you can't count on that to eliminate your trail scent. And besides that, there's all the other odors coming off your body that drop to the ground, and it forms a lane. From what I've seen all these years, watching deer stop when they hit my trail scent, it's probably about 6 to 8 feet wide. It's a wide swath of all those different molecules coming off your body, from your breath, from your hair, things you can't cover in your boots. Anyway, and they settle on the ground. And the most intense of those odors might be your footsteps, but there's a lane going through the woods 6, 8 feet wide, full of your scent. That's trail scent. Now, when a hunter's walking through the woods, we've got this triangular shaped area downwind over here that follows them. You know, after you walk a little ways, this disappears in minutes. It's just all, it becomes so expansive there isn't enough molecules left in the area for the deer to smell you. That's just temporary, airborne scent. But this scent here, that lasts 4 days or longer. Whitetail can come by 3 days later and smell your scent. And then if you use that, if you walk on here, say you go out in the morning, come back to camp or your car for lunch, go out again, make 4 trips on a day. Every time you go in there, you keep adding odor to that trail. And whitetails can find that, it can identify you by your scents on that trail, and even which direction you're going, like a bloodhound can do from your odors on that particular trail. So this one lasts quite a while. You have to keep that in mind. So the less of that you have to deal with, the better. And there's ways to get around that. I might not talk about that particular aspect of whitetail hunting today, but I wanted you to know there's 2 kinds of scents: trail scent, which lasts a long time, and airborne scent, which doesn't last very long at all unless you're stand hunting. It's constant the whole time you're there when you're in a tree stand. And it doesn't make any difference how high you are. That trail scent this airborne scent will reach the ground somewhere not too far away from your tree stand. But like I said, you know, every hunter has seen deer approach from downwind. That can happen if they're outside of the triangular area. So that happens. So anyway, you got those 2 things to worry about when you're deer hunting. One thing I want to make you understand right from the outset. I learned many years ago, it was in my early years of whitetail research, that strong and unusual scents can really alarm whitetails. I remember I was trying different kinds of what they called in those days cover scents. Usually they were strong smelling cover scents. And I could be out there in the dark hitting a stand site in the morning going downwind because I'm testing these things for effectiveness. Holy cow, that deer bounding all over the place and snorting in the dark, couldn't see where they were or what they were, what kind of deer they were. But obviously there are a lot of strong scents that us whitetail hunters can accumulate on their clothes and on their boots and their hands and their hair that can really alarm whitetails. Whenever a whitetail feels inclined to snort or run, bound, that whitetail is probably in the process of abandoning its range for a while where it lives. You know, like doe ranges aren't very big. They're only about 125 acres in size, and some of them are bigger if the deer numbers are low, and some are smaller, like 90 acres. But when you hear one snorting or bounding, it's heading off range. And if it's a mature doe or a yearling or a fawn, they probably won't be back for at least 4 days, maybe 5, but 4 days. And while they're going, that's another thing. I won't talk about that right now. I think I talked about it before, about danger scent being released from their tarsal glands. That lasts 4 or 5 days as well when they're bounding or when they're feeling greatly alarmed. But at any rate, if it's a big buck that's doing the snorting and bounding away, it's probably gone for the hunting season. It's very unlikely you're going to see that buck at all during the balance of the hunting season. So strong, unusual odors can do that to whitetails. You know, especially if you're a stand hunter. You know, you're sitting out there in a tree. Once a whitetail realizes that you're not moving, and they know stand hunters are not pursuers. They're not going to track them follow their tracks in the woods. They're not going to chase them. As long as they're a safe distance away, they're not going to be shot at. They feel kind of safe when they find a stand hunter from downwind. And you know, that happens a lot. It probably happens, you probably 10 times as many deer identify you downwind when you're a stand hunter than the numbers you actually see while you're stand hunting. They're out there. And once they find you, of course, then they start staying away from you. They'll maintain a safe distance of 100 yards or more in wooded areas, so they can be safe when you're there. But you're not particularly threatening to them unless you're sitting very still in the woods. But if you smell of strong and unusual odors, even while sitting still in the tree stand, all those deer that pass downwind of you are likely to become alarmed enough to either abandon their entire home range, which is most likely when the deer that smells those strong and unusual odors is a big buck 3.5 to 6.5 years old. either they'll abandon the area or they'll become nocturnal, just move at nighttime only, and becoming impossible to hunt. So you don't want any strong and unusual odors on you while you're hunting whitetails. And you can get rid of a lot of those odors using some of the products that are on the market today. And I can't tell you which one might be better than the other. Maybe one you're using you feel pretty confident, that's probably okay. Special clothes that help to eliminate the escape of odors from your body would be a good thing. And those are all fine things to do because it helps to keep your odors down. Myself, all the clothing I wear while deer hunting is washable. And every year before deer hunting begins, I wash all my deer hunting clothes, everything I'm going to wear, my coat and everything. I even tried washing rubber boots, but that didn't help. The rubber smell didn't go away. But at any rate, everything is washed, and then with scentless soap. You don't want any scent in that soap that you use to wash that clothing. Nothing like that. And nowadays they don't talk about color brighteners. Years ago I used to make sure they didn't have color brighteners in them either because it made everything you wear easier for whitetails to see. Even in starlight and at night, they can see colors in the blue, ultraviolet spectrum, which we can't. Us hunters can't see them. But so I always made sure that the soap I use had none of those things added. If there's nothing added, that really helps. Then I hang them outside to dry. I don't put them in the dryer. I put them outside to dry, and let them hang out there for 4 or 5 days out on my back porch where they won't get rained on, and until they're completely dry, and then they're about as scentless as they can be. And then they go into a one that was washed so it doesn't smell strong of plastic. They go into plastic bags, that's sealed up, and that stays in there until opening morning. And put those clothes on, and they're as scentless as they can be. And every day when I'm in deer camp, when I come in the evening, before we do any cooking, we just eat cold breakfast or cold lunches during the day, but anything before cooking in the evening, I take off all my outer clothing and hang it on a hanger in my truck, in my pickup, and put on my camp clothes. Camp clothes, those are just worn in camp, especially when we're going to be cooking, because we don't want any odors on the hunting clothes from cooking in the evening. That can be strong and unusual, like hamburgers or anything, something with onions and fried onions in there. All kinds of foods that have plenty of odor. Our barbecued ribs, our charcoal broiled steaks, things like that we have in deer camp. So be as scentless as you can be, but don't count on it being completely scentless, and don't count on this anything used to last the whole hunting season. It's going to. I wager that by the time 4 or 5 days of hunting has started, your clothing is starting to smell pretty good. You might not realize it. Take your clothes home and put them down in the laundry room and leave them there for a week, and then go back and pick them up and give them a sniff, and you won't believe all the odors you're going to smell in that hunting clothing. So anyway, be as scentless as you can. Good luck to you guys. I'll talk to you again soon. Good luck. Goodbye for now. So, all right.